Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight, we will be discussing The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Dr. Jerry Ball. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see that New Black World Orders in the building, and he said, "Peace, family. Share the show and hit the like button." And he said, "Glad you're here. Welcome and enjoy." I see that the Melanated Cafe is in the building. He said, "Peace to the tribe. Be one, Black first. Race first." Ashe. Brother Tiwolo and Brother Everett, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Hey family, how you doing? My name is Brother Tiwolo, affectionately known as Brother T. Once again, coming to read this excellent book, The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. Welcome panel and welcome chat. Thank you for joining us for another week.
And I am Brother Everett, General Secretary of the UNIA, and just loving this book right here, ready to get it in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you already know who I am. For those who don't know me, you know who I am. I'm Dr. Ma'at, and thank you so much for joining in. Family, look, I want to say this because I see some people are coming in and leaving out. You don't need the book to participate in the discussion. Okay. There are some people like my mother, she'll tune in. She hasn't read the book. She hasn't read it.
Mhm.
Doesn't have the book, but she tunes in Sunday after Sunday because it's a lot of information that's being discussed and you'll learn something. So even if you haven't read the book, The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, if you don't have it, if you didn't read it, still join in on the discussion, still listen in because there's some things I guarantee you that you're going to learn. Last week, we had a dynamic discussion. I mean, Brother T, you were on fire
Yeah.
last
Thank
week.
you.
I mean, you were on fire last week. You brought so much to the table
Thank
when
you.
we were discussing chapter 3 entitled Buying Power, Not Protest. The Myth Prevents Unrest. And in that chapter, Dr. Jared Ball talked about how the myth, well, when did it get started? And he discusses or explains that it started in 1954 with a video called The Selling of a Negro that was created by John H. Johnson, who was the founder of Jet and Ebony magazine. And from that video, I think at that point in time, they were propagating that Black people had the buying power of $15 billion. And so now it's at $1.2 trillion. And so tonight we're going to discuss chapter 4, entitled "The Myths Modern Purveyors," reviewing Saling and Nielsen. And so he's going to be talking about the origin of where are we getting this idea that Black people have the buying power of $1.2 trillion. So I do see that the sisters have come in. Peace to you, a beautiful mind. Peace and blessings to you. There's my sister right there, Sister Crystal Denise. I love that sister. I keep every discussion. I'm like, sis, you gotta get on the panel because this sister is brilliant. This sister is brilliant, and she loves our people, and she's doing a lot of things in her community. This sister is fire. So, sis, we definitely need you on this panel. Brother Africa the Great, he said, "Love my brothers and sisters from the Black Man's Truth." We love you too,
Awesome.
brother. Thank you so much for joining us. She said she's waiting for her
Fresh
shirt.
shirt.
She's waiting for her shirt. Okay, I'm gonna contact Mr. Harvey tomorrow and say what's going on with the shirt. And sis, when you get your shirt, you had to take a picture, post it, tag us. We're going to put it in our group chat, the Read Book Club group chat, so we can show you off in your shirt.
Awesome.
But yes, and so he begins with he's talking about the Saling. He said the initial report of the Saling Center for Economics Growth, which is located at Terry College of Business, housed in Bank of America Financial Center in Athens, Georgia. And so he said this initial report came out in 1994. And the lead author was a guy named Jeffrey Humphreys. And he said that the Saling Center, produces buying power reports to assist businesses um, target their advertising purchases. And it says the Nielsen works with the Black press to produce similar reports to assist the Black press uh, to assist the Black press justify its own claims that more ad revenue be spent among Black media to help bring those Black consumers to white corporations. Now, T, I want to show you and Brother Everett this.
Mhm.
I remember, I don't know if you all can see the tiny writing, but I used to download, that's what is research. Let me go back to Black economics. I
Okay.
used to download these reports. So
Wow.
you see this one says 9/17 2014. There's another one that says 1014, 2015. And then, I downloaded something in 2017. But I was one of those people that I was right there,
Yeah.
reading the African American Consumer Report in 2013.
You did a video on this some time ago.
Oh, I did, Brother T.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brother T,
Wow.
you remember? I mean, you have a good memory.
Yeah.
But so I'm like, why was I collecting this stuff? But I was
Mhm.
collecting it, and I must have did something with it. But I used to be one of those people. I would read the executive summary, and and I was looking at all the stats and
Mhm.
looking at all of these things, and looking at the pretty graphs and the Black household annual spending with beauty supply stores, and look at this light product brand loyalty. So it talks about all of this stuff. How much we spend in a household, what do we watch on television. And so again, I was one of those folks. You can see it right here. So that was the 2013 report. This is the 2014 report. But I was one of those folks, Brother T, that would I would keep up with this stuff.
Mhm.
But let me tell you where I messed up. Even as a PhD, I'm reading these reports and I'm looking at the graphs, but I went against what I usually say, and that is to ask, what is the methodology? I never looked at it. And I remember when Brother Onk and us would debate certain people, and they would bring up studies, and I say, well, what is your population size? And what was the methodology of the study? And that's how I would pick their arguments apart by their sources, by critiquing their sources. But I didn't do the same when it came to this Nielsen's report. Like when I looked at it, I said, oh, this, I'm looking at the numbers, the data in the chart. And I never said, well, let me go and check out the methodology to see how they came up with these numbers. I just accepted it like many of us do. We just accept things. And so anyway, so that is the Nielsen report. And so he begins this chapter with talking about Celine Center for Economic Growth. And he moves into talking about why they do it. And then he talks about Nielsen's report. And he says right here that in the Nielsen's report in 2013, they said that, it says Black buying power is on the rise from its current 1 trillion level to a forecasted 1.3 trillion by 2017. This is at the bottom of page 55. And it says supporting the claim are references to, and in quotes, he says, impressive gains by Black women in education. I remember reading this stuff. Black women in education and business ownership, Black consumers being loyal to name brands and beauty supplies, and how social media continues to engage Black consumers of all ages, and that not enough ad dollars are spent on television targeting Black audience who by percentage of the population watch more than anyone in the country. And so he talked about that. And this is what these reports were saying. So T, when I'm sitting back reading Dr. Ball's work, I'm like, yeah. Like I remember, reading this stuff.
Can we go back for 1 second?
Go back.
Page. We want to go to the beginning of this chapter.
You want to go all the way back to 53?
Yeah. I want to make a point because I don't want us to brush over this one point. Okay.
Make the point, Brother T.
Page 53 states that this report was done at a particular college in Athens, Georgia. Remember in Blueprint for Black Power, he talked about think tanks and how corporations pay certain groups, certain universities to think about certain problems. This report came for what college? Terry College of Business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let me tell you some numbers from this college. Terry, by the numbers, is 13th best public Bachelor of Business program from the U.S. News and World Report. Number 9, best public full-time MBA program from The Economist. Okay, 95% of the graduates accepted employment offers within 3 months of graduation.
Wow.
So when we talked about Blueprint for Black Power, we have to remember what Dr. Amos Wilson said, that they pulled from the best and the brightest. So this report was from the best and the brightest at that time to pull information to give to the government and corporations to target a certain audience. Also, not just students. These people are probably soon to be CEOs and also probably big players in those corporations. Thus, they were marketing too. So we got to remember these think tanks and this information is pulled from certain universities. And I didn't want that to brush past that Terry College of Business in Georgia was that university that this report first came from. We got to always monitor where to get the information from and what type of universities. It wasn't a predominantly Black university. This is a think tank. So I guarantee you, if we do some research, we may find some of the leaders of the major corporations that most of the funding comes from probably came from this university.
Wow.
Mm, mm.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Brother T, for making that powerful point. So I'm glad that you said, hold up, let's back up. We got to talk about where did this report come from, and you presented some numbers. So thank you for that data. And so Dr. Ball mentions the Nielsen's report. He mentions the Saling report, and then on page 56, he moves into a discussion, a discussion, or maybe a question that he posed to a reporter named Ellie Yu. He says about her national public radio marketplace story and its reference to both Nielsen and Saling, and claiming that Black women own about 1.5 million businesses in the country, according to the latest U.S. Census figures, generating more than 42 billion in sales in 2012. And so when he had this discussion, he said, I asked if she could share, beyond reference just to the reports themselves, who those numbers came from, right? And I guess he quotes her right here, and she says the Saling Center study, unfortunately, is only available for purchase.
Right.
So he said, I referenced their statistics that they were available in their public press release, and confirmed it with Jeffrey Humphreys with the Saling Center, who worked on the report. So he said that his email went without a response. So he emailed Humphreys and it went without a response. And he said for the lay readers, it costs $125 to get a Saling report. And so you and I both know, T, a lot of brothers and sisters, they may hear the numbers, and say, and someone may reference a Saling report, but a lot of us aren't going to spend $125 to go download a report and to scrutinize it. A lot of people just, don't, unfortunately, have that type of disposable income for a report. And so he's making a point here that the lay readers, he said $125 fee for the Saling report is an obvious barrier, right? Though it could be argued no such concern should exist for national media who will make routine reporting out of the center's work, right? Whose mission is to raise the economic intelligence of the country. So why the hell are you making the report $125 if you're trying to raise the economic, intelligence of the country? It should be accessible, right, to lay readers, right, or lay people. And so, did you brothers want to jump in?
Well, I wanted to go back real quick, Dr. Mata, and then go forward. When you were talking about the Nielsen report, I just wanted to make sure I understood that, because I was kind of coinciding that with the video that the Johnson brother had put out, and that sold to the Black press is marketing that report, correct? So it's I wanted to make sure I'm correct in understanding. It's kind of like they're using that report so they could bring in marketing revenue to Black press. Is that correct?
Black media.
Black media. Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Advertising dollars.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm telling you, they convinced the hell out of me when I was reading the reports. I was like, "What? We spending all this? They need to be, So it's very convincing." But go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead, brother T.
I'm sorry. No, I was just reading to piggyback what you were saying, to help corporations and brands to reach their targeted market. So that's basically, if we was talking about Johnson doing with Ebony, doing with Jet Magazine, that was the targeted market. So if we got to remember, and I want to go back also to the college, that college was named after one of the biggest banks in America, which is Bank of America. So we have to tie in that they would have a correlation with the GDP. Also, they would have a correlation with the big businesses and also the marketing agencies. So you think that the corporations would have to get funding, from the banks in order to build their business, right? So what better place than the name of the place that sponsors that college? Bank of America. So all this stuff ties in when people look into how corporations, banks, and marketing agencies all tie in order to make things work. And we learned from the last chapter why it is important to have that intimate relationship between corporation, right, and also the government. Everything ties in.
Right.
Everything. And peace to you, brother Daniel. He said, what book are you reading? The book we're reading and discussing is The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Dr. Jared Ball. All right. And you don't need to have the book or have read the book, brother, to, to chime in. Okay. All right. And so oh, where were we? Okay, and so then he moves into discussing how the Saling report defines buying power, as a concept and explaining its actual function. And it says, simply defined, buying power is the total personal income of residents that is available after taxes for spending on virtually everything that they buy, but it does not include dollars that are borrowed or that were saved in previous years. It is not a measure of wealth. It does not include what tourists spend during their visits. And they also say here, and Dr. Ball makes sure that he added some emphasis. He says, unfortunately, there are no geographically precise surveys of annual expenditures of income of all the nation's major racial ethnic groups. Wait a minute right there, Brother T.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling us we have this buying power, but you just said in your own report that there is no geographically precise surveys of annual expenditures and income of all the nation's major racial and ethnic groups. Even estimates of expenditures by race or ethnicity are difficult to find, especially for individual states.
Mm.
So, Brother T, when I was reading page 57, because he moves into some other things. But what he was basically saying is that if you just read the language, listen to what they say, estimates, projections, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay attention to the language. And I think on page 57, he does a beautiful job breaking down the language in the report. Brother T, Brother Everett, did you all want to chime in?
No, you were flowing. I like what you said about talking about the language though, because it's not concrete. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like they're all over the place with the information and trying to spoon feed you what they want you to have to make it look like it's more bomb power than it actually is. Um, this is just phenomenal. I never even knew that these reports existed till I read the book. How businesses can use these reports to try to get an advantage over the consumer, and how they can be manipulated at the same time with the information. So I just wanted to say that how the languages can easily mislead a business about what they're trying to, and they're paying for this report as well.
Right. So it's amazing that if we sit down to think, this is where the misconception came from. That people said, "Oh, it's the dollars that we have." I think the connection is that we should. It's not saying that we shouldn't support business or black business. He explains later on in the chapter that supporting business is not the problem. We're saying that the money that's left over based off the labor can build wealth. See, it's like we tying up the words and we not knowing the definition thereof.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we can support business, that we cannot support black business, which most of our brothers and sisters think that we're saying. We're saying that when we talk about buying power, what can your dollar buy?
Right.
Is it going to be productive for a business to sell to you? Now, we think about what John H. Johnson was trying to do. He was trying to change the perception of white advertisers by turning us from, if you remember the video, he says the white business owners were saying blacks are drifters and wayward, meaning they don't stay in one place. They shift from job to homes, and they're drifters. We're not looking at them to be really a dollar that we can count on. His whole campaign was to prove, hey, no, that's not true. We're doing better than the numbers say. I'm letting you know that we're moving, that we got the good jobs. We're getting to these new homes. We have taken advantage of the New Deal, of the FHAs and the GI bills, and now he was selling that aberration. And this is what we have to realize, that it was a switch, it was a play in order to make sure our dollars can, or make sure companies could thrive. So they said, hey, look at us. We can also benefit from your merchandise. And he was just used as a tool. So I just wanted to kind of say it's about buying power. Like today, our dollar doesn't buy what it used to can buy. There's a saying that go to Fat Joe says, yesterday prices is not the day prices. Our
Mhm.
dollar cannot buy what it could buy 10 years, what it could have bought it 10 years ago. So we had to look at those terms and understand it's not what the group is saying. It's that the ability of a group to purchase produce from a corporation. And that's the biggest issue.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that
Mhm.
breakdown, Brother T. And so he moves on to say that even the report's own numbers, and he's talking about the Saling report. He says the report's own numbers show that Black buying power accounts for only 8.7% of the national whole. He says, meaning far from any real power and relative even to the myth, to a mythic buying power, that even the myth reflects a smaller proportion than the percent of the national population held by Black people at roughly 14%. So
Mhm.
he's saying that even according to their own reports, what we that if that is true, let's say that it is true, 1.2 trillion. He says it only accounts for 8.7% of the national whole. And then he gets into criticizing. He says, well, wait a minute. He says, the claim that we have 1.2, how is the claim true, right? That we have a buying power of well, 1 point, or he says 1+ trillion. He
Mhm.
said when we didn't earn any more than 800
100.
billion
Mm-hmm.
collectively. So Dr. Ball is saying when he was looking at reports, it said that we brought in 800 billion. So if we brought in 800 billion, how did we spend? How did we have a disposable income? Because that's
Right.
bringing in 800 billion and 800 billion. That's not taking into account,
The expenses
your
and stuff.
expenses, your
Mm-hmm.
house, your rent, your mortgage, your car notes, your car
Mhm.
insurance, your life insurance, your cell phone bills, your gas and electric. You might pay daycare, food, clothing. I mean, so you're saying that we brought in 800 billion, but we spent 1.2. So he says that, he says that doesn't make any sense. And then he moves into criticizing their methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And this is on page 58. Did one of you brothers want to talk about the methodology?
We're on page 58.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, he's talking about their methodology for generating this report.
I didn't see that. Oh, that's at the bottom. I didn't do
It's
I didn't
uh
do any underlining of that issue. Did you have some points
You
oh, yeah,
talk
that you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
discuss?
about the one part when he's talking about because there are no direct measures of the buying power of African Americans, Native Americans, Asians, whites, and Hispanics.
Yeah, go ahead and read that one.
Okay, got you.
These estimates were calculated using national and regional economic models, univariate forecasting techniques, and data from various U.S. government sources. The model developed by the Selig Center integrates statistical methods used in regional economics with those of market research. In general, the estimation process has two parts: estimating disposable personal income and allocating that estimate by race and ethnicity based on both population estimates and variance in per capita income.
Keep
So
on reading, brother. Keep on reading.
keep going. The
Yes.
Selig Center estimates are consistent with the concepts and definitions used in the National Income and Product Accounts, NIPA. Readers should note that buying power is not the equivalent of aggregate money income as defined by the Census Bureau, because the Selig Center's estimates are based on disposable personal income data obtained from the BEA, rather than money income values issued by the Census Bureau. The result is significantly higher The result, I'm sorry, significantly higher estimates of buying power. Oh wow. There are several reasons for this lack of correspondence. First, the income definition used by the BEA is not the same as the definition used by the Central Census Bureau. Second, census income data are gathered through a nationwide survey sample of households and residents tend to underreport their income, which accounts for much of the discrepancy. And finally, the population universe of the census money income estimates differ from universe used by the BEA. So they like all over different, have coming up with different results and stuff like that. It's kind of like not coinciding with how they do it.
Exactly. And so I agree with Dr. Ball. When I read this, after
Mhm.
I read that was their methodology for me, and I don't know because I'm an engineer. So I'm looking for formulas. Like when you say this is my model, in my mind, I'm looking for formulas. I'm looking
Mhm.
for, well, what formula, what distribution did you use? Or what I'm looking for that. And so when I read this, I was like, that was their methodology. I was like, what formulas that you use, or you grab these reports and then so
Mhm.
what is your model? Like I wanted to see your model. And so that's what I thought when I read it.
It's
And then Dr.
propaganda.
Ball,
Yeah.
exactly. Then Dr. Ball read exactly. I mean, he wrote what I was thinking. He says, while the Saline report never demonstrates, defines, or shows their model developed to assess buying power, what they do share, and especially the final claims themselves, do provide important keys to understanding the performance of the myth today. And so he goes into some things, and again he reiterates, that we earn roughly less than 800 billion. How do we have so much disposable income left?
Mhm.
And so he critiques the language of it. And so he says, in other words, and I'm at the middle of page 59, he says Saling estimates and projections cannot be based on calculable numbers of actual incomes and actual expenditures. So how did they come up with $1.2 trillion? He said they
Mhm.
must be generated by unclear methods to satisfy even more confused claims, which never include public mention of the center's function to produce reports meant for targeting ad revenue and not explaining the actual conditions of any group.
Mm.
I just think
Hmm.
that Dr. Ball did like a wonderful job destroying the myth of
Mhm.
black buying power. I think that he just, kudos to him. That's all I can say.
Mhm.
He just destroyed it with this book. And so anybody, after reading this book, if you still walking around saying we got 1.2 trillion, I don't, at this point I don't get it.
Right.
Especially if you're tuned into us. We're
Mhm.
telling you it's not, and he's showing and proving everything that he's saying. And
This.
he's backing it up with data. Go ahead, brother T.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. He's forcing us to look to try to find those who were spewing this, because there's no, like you said, there's no method, there's no research. There's these numbers were like kind of thought up in the air, like they did some simple math. Not even that. It's nothing there to show us exactly where that number comes from. Especially after you find out the definitions that's given and what these
Mhm.
organizations did. Down from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, understanding how much we make, then understanding the disposable income myth, and then you talk about what the GDP was and the relationship. All these things just blows out that talk out the water,
It does.
Right.
and it really opened my eyes when I read the definitions and said, oh, GDP, that reminds us, okay, what the nation produces.
Mhm.
I'm saying? Do you Once again we see the relationship between government and corporations. And I'm saying, so it's totally different from what we're talking about in a later.
Absolutely. And I love how he goes into the BEA because it says, in their methodology, the Celine says, well, we used information. I think it says they used information from obtained from the BEA. And so
Mhm.
on page 59, Dr. Ball breaks down, okay, well, what is the BEA? And he says that the BEA studies are of national economies and GDP, so gross domestic product. He says, which assists the confusion in heavy rotation that black buying power is equivalent of any number of top 25 national economies. And I'm not going to call out elders in the community. I've actually heard elders say that we had more money than some of these other,
The nations.
these other nations. We spend more money. And I'm like, and it sounded good at the time. We like, dang, God, well, we need to take that money and we need to pull our resources together, and we should be doing, but I've heard elders in the community say that we spend enough money, that we spend more money than other nations' economies. And it says that the BEA studies contribute to that idea. He says, however, these are not studies meant, again, to assess the actual condition of various communities within those countries. GDP, so gross domestic product, only measures the value of goods and services purchased in a given year, meaning GDP measures the wealth generated for those who own those goods and services.
Right.
So it's not a measurement of wealth. So running around saying, well, we spending, he's saying that the GDP only measures the value of goods and services purchased in a given year, meaning it measures the wealth generated for those who own those goods and services, and says nothing about the relative condition of those doing the spending. Brother T.
Now, this is what I was saying earlier, right? If the argument is that we have to be producers, then I'm all for it. Because this is what this is saying. The money goes to those who produce.
Yeah.
Come on, let's talk about it.
There you go.
So having a business, and it already explained in this chapter as well, that just having a business is different from the GDP numbers, right? So being a corporation that produce the country's goods, being part of that, maybe in some type of industry, could be the goal, the push. This is what I can understand us moving towards, being part of the pushers, the producers, right? But we now discredit the talk of anything else that was from other conversation. So understanding what the GDP is, that definition can be read again.
Yeah.
Just so people can understand, the GDP only measures the value of goods and services purchased in a given year, meaning the GDP measures the wealth generated for those who own those goods and services, and says nothing about the relative condition of those doing the spending.
Right.
So that right there closes a lot of doors.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right under that, it says, Brother T, which is important to me, it says it doesn't measure inequality. And it's really funny when we start talking about these reports, because the last book we read, we know a black person could make 80,000, and a white person might make only 20,000, but the white person, there you go. The white person doesn't have a lot of bills. They've been inherited with a lot of things. So you can't even go on income. You got to look at the inequality and things like that, and the conditions of people you're doing a report on.
The asset transformation, transformative assets, right?
Exactly, and especially when you, like you say, the variables of the report, Dr. Ma'at, you was talking about, even if they had in the expenses, I mean, I made 5,000 this week, but my mortgage is 4,000. I only got 1,000. And then what if I don't pay the mortgage this month and buy a bunch of stuff, and then next month I got to double up? So the reports can be really crazy because of a lot of variables and the inequality in the community. It really, I mean, it's a good mark to judge. You can see how much we're making, but to say the total wealth in the community, that's a disparity right there.
The hidden costs.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Of being African American.
And hey, let me tell you something. Our salaries, we're getting hit with a hidden cost every day. It's called inflation. See, we got to remember as well that the goods and products that's being produced, we're being hit with inflation. So like I said, our dollar doesn't buy what it used to do. So just add that to the equation of the inequality, that the hidden tax is inflation.
Well, brothers, I'm sitting here looking at it. I'm on page 60, which is the last page. He says that we already talked about that with the GDP, and you said that GDP has increased. so has the level of inequality. So I think you brothers drove that point home. I think you drove that point home. And brother, Dr. Jared Ball, at the end of this section, he says that buying power is a phrase developed by marketers. So he's driving this point home. Buying power is a phrase developed by marketers to attract advertising revenue. The numbers read as immense and impressive, but in context reveal themselves to be reflective only of what wealth is being generated for the owners of production. Right. And so that's what African science just said, right? Means of
Hmm.
production.
Means of
So he
production.
says large sums of buying power dollars do not reference or reflect the autonomous power of any group to use that money as they would choose monolithically into the benefit of any whole. And so he's saying that the idea, we'll say, oh, let's just, if we just spend our monies with black folks and we just, and this is, trust me, when I say this, I don't want anyone to think that Dr. Ma'at is not saying do not support black owned businesses.
Right.
I support black owned businesses, black owned brands. I buy True Laundry detergent. I buy Freedom
Toilet
paper.
paper.
Yeah,
That you.
Freedom toilet paper.
Mhm.
I have Coral Oral. I use that as my toothbrush. We started buying it's a black, we bought a
Battery,
few
right?
loaves. Yeah, the back batteries, Harry, the Tubman batteries, purchased those. But
I
it's
never heard of them.
yeah, Tubman
Tubman
batteries.
batteries.
Tubman
Wow.
batteries. Yeah, we bought
Put that on
those.
the list.
And then it was oh, if my cousin's watching, Amber, throw it in the chat. It's a bread. It's a black owned company that makes their own bread, and we've been supporting them as well. And
You
so
have
I'm
you have videos on this, Dr. Mahat, so
Oh yeah,
it's
absolutely. So yeah,
documented.
look,
Well
it's
documented.
documented. Yeah, it's documented. So I'm not saying that because people will take like a clip, brother T, like a snippet of
Mhm.
what you say, and then they'll put it on the internet and say, Dr. Mahad said don't support. What we're saying, and I agree with Dr. Ball, is that we that's not our key to financial freedom or our key to liberation or solely our key to freedom and liberation. I'm sorry, liberation and sovereignty. That's just not it. To say, you know what, we're just going to take whatever we take and we're just going to pool our money together. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't. We should still pool our money together and
Yes.
establish, businesses and establish our own institutions. Yes, we should. But that's not the end all be all, for lack
Right.
of better words. More needs to be done. And what do we mean by more needs to be done? We need to be getting involved in politics. Dr. Claude Anderson talked about that in Powernomics. He
Yeah.
talked about practicing group economics and group politics. He didn't just say practice group economics. He said, no, we need to get involved in politics. Dr. Amos Wilson talked about that in Blueprint for Black Power. He talked about group economics. He also talked about group politics. And so a lot of our predecessors and ancestors have advocated for us to do both, and
Right.
so I don't know if any of you brothers wanted to jump in, um
Yeah.
or
I went a little dark there. I'm sorry. My lights went my lights
this
went down.
it's all good, brother T.
But like I said, it's like you mentioned, it's not saying that we should not support black business. We should support black business because that money goes into for families, and it can be it can definitely help families and business out, especially who puts back into our communities. But we're talking about the wealth. We're talking about affecting it on a global or a national stage, where we learned about, once again, how it affects pricing. The government can assist corporations by making sure that the workers can afford the price, but the business also makes sure that they make a profit at the highest cost. So all these things come into play. So, but it's not saying that we shouldn't support our brothers and sisters when we do the business. But when we talking about a large scale, we have to understand that there's a connection between government, corporations, GDP, how the dollar works, and
Mhm.
what the value of the dollar is. Now, we talk about multiplying a dollar. We have to looking at investing. We have to look at putting our dollar in certain asset bearing um, um, assets that help us to hedge against inflation, like gold and silver. So we can do things with our money, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So, like Dr. Mamat says, not saying that we shouldn't support black business. I don't want anyone to say that Dr. Ball or this book group is advocating not to do black business, because that's not the case.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
not.
I'm glad you established that, Dr. Mott and Brother T, because when I first was reading the book, I was like, I don't agree with the book. We got to support businesses. We got to be self-sufficient, and we got to start building that camaraderie within our race to support each other. So I was like, forget the dollar amount. It's more of a subconscious thing, to support each other like other communities do.
Right.
But as he started breaking down the game, because this is a whole game that he's doing with advertising and marketing how Black people spend, and false advertising to a certain degree with how much money we have. It's exploitation to a little bit. So it kind of got me more into how they treat us and stuff like that, how they're marketing our community, and just how we need to wake up in certain areas. So like you said, yeah, we need to support Black owned businesses and things of that nature, but we got to do more. It's more than just that. We got to be producers and figure out a whole lot of other stuff.
Absolutely. All right,
And
brothers. Go ahead, Brother T.
just want to say, targeted audience come to agree with the generated message. The whole power of how this thing works, not just the corporations, it has to do with also the marketing. We learned early in this chapter that even big institutions like banks put money into colleges to get reports, to get us on board of those reports and believe in this propaganda. It's a whole machine being used in this, from the students to the corporations to the government. Everything is being used, and that's what I think that we don't understand. Most of us don't understand that part of it. It's global. It has to make us uh, complicit to this generated message, and that's where the propaganda comes in. He did an excellent job in explaining that in his book thus far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you brothers, you have any closing words for the listening audience?
Another great
Not,
chapter.
another great chapter. So next week, family, look, chapter 5. We're going to be reading chapter 5. It says the myth at play. I know you probably can't see it because of my light, but it says the myth at play, the oh so suitable and environment. And so in this abstract, he just says that despite its appearances in the media system in the United States is far from commercial, consolidated ownership with content-driven advertisement, and which is far more pervasive and penetrative than many realize are made or are made aware. It is a media environment designed specifically for the purposes of propaganda and therefore most suited to that function. The myth of buying power relies heavily on this media environment and thrives accordingly as a result. This point will be demonstrated via the coverage or promotion of buying power in related subjects conducted since 2009. So I'm looking forward to discussing this chapter next week. Before we went live, we were all kind of joking about it because it's a bit of a lengthy chapter. It's about 25 pages, I believe. Yeah, about 20. It starts on page 63, ends on page 86. So about 25 pages. And so we'll be discussing this chapter or this section next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, family, and I'm glad that Sister Crystal talked about the Read Book Club shirts. Get your Read Book Club shirt. All right, I have mine on. I don't see brother Everett. We have ours on. The Read. Let me move my mic.
Here.
Yes,
I got it on. I was coming from the game. I was switching up fast. I was coming from the game.
Yeah, you switching up fast. So, family, get your Read Book Club t-shirts from Hockey_Customs. That is her. That is his IG. Or if you don't have an IG page, you can just email him at harvey.lewis@gmail.com. And Mr. O'Harvey will get the shirt on to you. We need to support our youth, and that's what I try to make sure we do. We got to make sure that we support our youth. A Beautiful Mind, thank you so much for tuning in, brother Jeremiah Africa, all the way from Ghana. This brother just got I want to say reinstated instead of adopted, right? I don't like saying that we get adopted by African,
Awesome.
Yeah, he got installed, and he got, I'm gonna say reinstated. into an African ethnicity. It was a beautiful thing watching his Facebook, his Facebook story and his pictures, and he was sharing with the community.
That's
He was
awesome.
sitting there, I think, with the Queen Mother. Brother Jeremiah, was it the Queen Mother you were sitting with? I think it was like the Queen Mother, and she, so I love it. I love it. So this is a young brother who decided to repatriate to Africa, and I mean, he's doing some things that, I mean, people in their, older folks, in 30s and 40s and 50s are like, I'm scared to make that move. And this brother just, he felt moved to do it, and he did it. I think he even linked up with Cambone, Dr. Cambone over there in Ghana. So he's, Brother Jeremiah is over there. He boots on the ground. And we love you, Brother Jeremiah, and we appreciate it. He said, yes, the Paramount Ashanti Queen. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. All right. And Brother New World Order, thanks for being in the building. Africa the Great. Yes, I agree that we need to build our own system. Again, Sister Crystal, Melissa, Africa Science, Melanated Great, Person Kid 21. Brother Donnie was talking about our Baltimore accent. He was funny. He said, his brother Donnie said, there go that Baltimore
What
do.
I'll
do, and I'll two, and I'll.
Mm-hmm.
And
I try to slow it down, but it comes straight out. I can't
it
stop it.
does. It does. Like Tiffany had asked me, T. She said, "How do you pronounce?" She said, Quetta. She was trying to see something, and I said, "I would pronounce it as Quetta." She said, "Isn't it Quetta? The Quetta?" I said, "No. In Baltimore, we wouldn't say that her name is Quetta. We would say her name is Quetta." Yeah, that's what we say. Quetta. That's our D's, our T's are our D's. It's Quetta.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when Lord Jamal came on, he thought I was calling him Jamal. His name is Jamar. And I wasn't saying, I don't pronounce his name Jamar. I don't speak with Baltimore. It's Jamal. So we just have that lazy Baltimore lazy tongue.
Remember, we South too.
Yeah, we say exactly. All right, so family, we'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please have a blacktastic week. Peace and Black power.